Awesome. Great. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining. I'll just possibly wait for another couple of minutes before everyone joins. And until then, we can go through our introductory video.
दोस्तों, वेलकम टू अपना कम्युनिटी। ये वो जगह है जहां आप अपने असली पोटेंशियल को एक्सप्लोर कर सकते हैं। देखो, सबके पास स्किल्स होते हैं, पर क्या आपके अंदर वो स्पार्क है जो आपको कामयाबी की ऊंचाइयों तक ले जा सकता है? अगर आप सोच रहे हैं जॉब चेंज करने के लिए, लेकिन रेज्यूमे सेलेक्ट नहीं हो रहा, या फिर इंग्लिश में इंटरव्यू देना थोड़ा चैलेंजिंग लग रहा है, तो फिक्र मत कीजिए। यहां हम हैं आपके साथ, आपको सपोर्ट करने के लिए। अपना कम्युनिटी में आपको मिलेगी बेहतरीन कम्युनिटीज, जहां आप अपने प्रोफेशनल स्किल्स को सुधार सकते हैं। चाहे आप एक्सेल, टैली, जीएसटी में माहिर बनना चाहें, या फिर आप खुद एक ब्यूटिशियन या डिजाइनर हैं, तो यहां आप अपने काम को शोकेस करके दूसरों को टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स देते हुए आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। अपना कम्युनिटी में आपको मिलेगा मेंटर्स का एक खजाना और बड़े इन्फ्लुएंसर्स का साथ, जो आपको हर कदम पर 1-to-1 गाइड करेंगे। यहां आप ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं अपने फील्ड या इंडस्ट्री स्पेसिफिक ग्रुप्स, जहां आपको ऐसे कई लोग मिलेंगे जिनसे सीख के आप वो गलती ना करें जो वो कर चुके हैं। ऐसे लोगों की जिन्होंने स्टार्ट किया था एज एग्जीक्यूटिव्स एंड आर नाउ सक्सेसफुल मैनेजर्स इन देयर डोमेन्स, जो आपको आगे बढ़ाने में मदद करेगा। यहां आपको मिलेगा वो सही डायरेक्शन जो आपकी करियर को नेक्स्ट लेवल ले जाएगा। तो लेट्स अनलॉक योर पोटेंशियल टुगेदर। अपना कम्युनिटी में ज्वाइन करें और अपने सपनों की ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचने का सफर शुरू करें।
Great. Thank you all for joining again. My name is Rohan, one of the co-founders of QFirst, which is a mentorship aggregator platform supporting Apna with Apna Exclusives and the mentors for Apna Exclusives. And as a part of community engagement at Apna, we have been doing this for a while, termed as Apna Exclusives. And this happens on weekdays. The sessions happen on weekdays, 7 p.m. and weekends at 3 p.m. Main idea to help people ideate and advance in their professional careers. And we are covering a wide range of topics. It can be as simple as spoken English, functional skills, or even specialized topics like data science and product management. And today we are going to we are having Indranil with us. Welcome, Indranil.
Hi.
He's going to take us through the topic of interviewing for entry-level tech roles at product companies. Indranil is a software development engineer too at Amazon. And without much ado, I'll hand it over to
Okay. Hi everyone. So let's get started. As part of this session, we would focus on. Let me know if I am audible. If I'm not audible at any point, please let me know. So, as part of the session, we would be focusing on entry-level SD interviews. So the goal is to tell you about how to go about preparation, what sort of interviews you can expect, and what sort of companies you can apply to. So let's get started. So first and foremost, like companies are broadly classified into three categories. We would be focusing on product companies in this talk. Service-based companies have a similar preparation model, but the bar of the questions are lower. So I have broadly classified the companies into three brackets. The service-based companies are typically companies like Infosys, TCS, so on and so forth. They tend to offer a package less than 10 lakhs. Product-based companies are generally startups, both Indian startups as well as international startups higher in India. So they could be something like a Flipkart or like um, Cred or some other such startups. Apna is again another startup that hires software engineers. Um, Other than that, we have the big tech product companies. This typically consists of Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and the entire list, Microsoft, Uber, Airbnb. It's a fairly big list of product companies, and these companies tend to offer a higher package. And all of these companies hire not only from campus but also via off-campus opportunities. So if you will go over how you can ensure that you get an interview, and if you get an interview, how you can clear the interviews of any of these companies. So first up, there are broadly three categories of roles that entry-level engineers interview for. So the first is the most popular one, the general SD role, or in certain companies, it's also titled as the backend engineer. So the skill set that companies are looking for to hire these folks is generally related to problem solving. Then we have front-end engineers. Front-end engineering is a relatively new domain, and front-end engineers typically build out your customer experience. And contrary to popular belief, the skill set required for this role is quite different from that of a general SD or backend engineer. General SD can obviously pick those skills up and is expected to at times. But in general, front-end engineers have a slightly different skill set and a slightly different style of interviews. We're going to talk about what those interviews are. Um, then we have research engineers or applied scientists. These roles typically involve research in particular domains, and a lot of big tech companies have these roles in India. For example, Microsoft hires research engineers, Amazon hires applied scientists, and there are companies that hire ML engineers as well. So these roles will have interviews specific to a research topic that you are focusing on. So for instance, if they are hiring for machine learning, you'll have machine learning interviews. If they are hiring for um, a topic like databases, you'll have interviews on databases. So we'll go over how each of these roles differ in terms of the interview process and what you can do to get shortlisted in these interviews. So broadly, SD1 front-end engineering interviews and applied scientist interviews, all of them will have a data structure round.
हिंदी में समझा सकते हैं
Um, yeah, so SD1 interviews will typically have a data structures and algorithms round. Irrespective of the role you apply to, you'll have this round. The difficulty of this round varies across companies. Certain companies, like the big tech companies, tend to have a more challenging data structures round, whereas startups
क्या कर
tend to
रहे
have
हो
easier rounds.
एक गणित
After that, there are LLD rounds, which basically means low-level design round. Just a minute. Uh, okay, let's continue. So there are LLD rounds, which basically means low-level design rounds. So different companies conduct this round in different formats. You may be asked to code out an entire functionality, which is generally classified as machine coding. So this is a round very popular with startups. Flipkart asks these rounds. Udan is another startup that asks these rounds. Cred is also popular for asking this round. And then there are interviews that are focused on low-level design, but you don't have to
ये
implement
भेज रहा हूँ
everything. So
हिंदी में बता
the difference between machine coding and data modeling rounds are okay. Should I change to
हिंदी में नहीं
Hindi
बता
or
सकते
uh, there may be folks like those who don't know Hindi. Let me know if I should change the language. I could explain it in Hindi as well.
कंटिन्यू
Okay, let's continue. Um, at the end of the session, like we'll have a Q&A session. So if you want me to explain any of these topics again, feel free to ask. Um, so yeah, let's go over each of these interviews now. One second. So first up, irrespective of the role you apply to, you'll have a data structure round. So one of the most common questions is how do you get started with data structures and algorithms? And my advice generally for this is you should have a grasp over a language of your choice. It could be C, C++, Java, Python, or something else as well. These are generally the languages you need to have a baseline understanding of. Once you have a basic understanding of how these languages work, a good place to get started is one of these websites. So I think there's a question. Just a minute. Uh, just 1 minute. I'll do one thing. I will repeat everything in Hindi after I explain it in English, if that helps.
Indranil, you don't have to repeat everything. Maybe you can just have a multilingual thing. Like if you're comfortable, you can just say half in Hindi and half in
Okay,
English.
got it. Yeah, take it. Fine. So for data structures and algorithms, firstly, आपको एक language अच्छे से आना चाहिए. You can pick C, C++, Java, Python, or some other languages as well. But whichever language you pick, you need to be good at that. उसके बाद,
I
if you
know,
want
but
to get
Everyone, if you are going to help us having your mics muted, it will be easier for us to take the session, or else I don't think we can go ahead with this. So please mute your mics. It will only help us to continue with the session.
कोई बताया जी क्या?
Sneha, I think we'll have to remove people who are not muting. I think that is the only way around.
Yes, Rohan.
Yeah,
In
please.
case if you all have got any queries, please put it in the chat box. But else, please be on mute. At the end of the session, you will be given a chance to
Yeah.
ask your queries.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
fine. So Hacker Earth, the CodeMonk link that I've shared on the slide is a good place to get started. अगर कुछ भी आपको नहीं आता, you can start with typing out Hacker Earth CodeMonk on Google and you would be directed to the website. Once you go to that website, you can just pick the topic of your choice and start solving questions. Easy questions होते हैं, medium questions होते हैं, hard questions होते हैं. Start with easy and then move to medium and then move to hard. Like, and at any point if you're stuck, give the question some time, typically an hour or so before you start looking at hints, and then get to the editorial. Like, the best way to become good at data structures and algorithms is to practice problems. Hacker Earth is one such site. Then there is Watch, and if you're preparing for specific interviews, then the best site is LeetCode. You can also practice on InterviewBit. So LeetCode and InterviewBit पे there are company specific questions, and in general questions जो पहले companies have asked. So you can pick either of the websites and just start solving questions. The websites allow you to sort problems by Rohan, should I switch to Hindi entirely? If
Yeah. I mean, you can.
okay,
You can just keep switching. Yeah.
ठीक है, nice. ठीक है, तो प्रॉब्लम्स प्रैक्टिस करने के लिए आप लीड कोड या इंटरव्यू बिट यूज कर सकते हैं. एक कोई प्लेटफॉर्म पिक कीजिए एंड उस पे आप कंटिन्यू कीजिएगा सॉल्व करना. स्टार्ट विद अ इजी प्रॉब्लम, फिर एक बार आप कंफर्टेबल हो जाते हो इजी में, फिर मीडियम एंड देन हार्ड. अगर आपको कॉम्पिटिटिव कोडिंग में इंटरेस्ट है, लाइक इफ यू रियली वांट टू बिकम गुड एट प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग, देन the two websites are CodeChef and CodeForces. CodeChef and CodeForces का मॉडल ऐसा होता है कि okay, CodeChef and CodeForces, should I okay,
Sneha, I think you will have to intervene here because we are having a very difficult crowd to maintain.
I feel let's go with Hindi and English, like so that rest of them can understand because most of or else.
हेलो सर, क्या पढ़ा रहे? कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा, फिर से पढ़ाइए. समझ में बाहर है.
Rohan, let's do one thing. Let's go with Hindi and English. That would be better because we cannot keep explaining everything in Hindi again. So
Yeah, we cannot explain in Hindi, and the members have to be notified at least before that the session is going to happen in English. But in English, you can just carry both. You just keep going.
Okay,
Sorry.
no worries. Fine. Uh, I will stick to English and let's see. Okay, like I'll try to repeat the key points in Hindi if that helps. Okay, like I'll repeat a summary in Hindi. So let's continue. Uh, so if you are interested in competitive coding, and competitive coding is a good way to become sharper at problem solving skills and um, get shortlisted in companies. So you can pick CodeChef and CodeForces as platforms. CodeForces is generally the platform where you have a more challenging set of problems and a better community. CodeChef is typically focused on India, so the community is smaller, and although the problems on CodeChef are also quite interesting, you can pick either of them. CodeForces typically has short contests, whereas CodeChef has long contests as well. So if you are starting out and you are in college, you have a lot of time. Um, pick CodeChef long challenges. You can learn a lot of tricks and problem solving skills uh, in these contests. Long challenge will allow you to solve problems over 10 days, and there'll be like 7 or 8 questions. So you can spend an entire day thinking over a problem and then coming to an answer. I'll explain the entire thing once very quickly in Hindi. तो अगर आपको प्रोग्रामिंग डेटा स्ट्रक्चर्स एंड एल्गोरिदम स्टार्ट करना है, सबसे पहले आप कोई लैंग्वेज में स्ट्रांग हो जाइए, प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज में C++, जावा, पाइथन, जो भी आपको सही लगे। इसके लिए यूट्यूब पे आपको काफ़ी ट्यूटोरियल्स मिल जाएंगे, बुक्स भी अवेलेबल होती हैं, आप अपने हिसाब से पिक कर लीजिएगा। उसके बाद आप कोडमॉन्क हैकरॉस पे एक ट्यूटोरियल सीरीज है, उससे स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं, या फिर स्पॉज करके एक वेबसाइट है जिसमें प्रॉब्लम्स आर रैंक फ्रॉम आसान टू मीडियम एंड हार्ड, तो जस्ट कीप सॉल्विंग क्वेश्चन एंड उसके बाद आप एक बार कंफर्टेबल हो जाते हो, उसके बाद आप पिक कर लीजिए अपना प्लेटफॉर्म। कोडशेफ थोड़ा सा आसान होता है टू गेट स्टार्टेड। कोडशेफ में आप लॉन्ग कॉन्टेस्ट से स्टार्ट कीजिएगा। तो लॉन्ग कॉन्टेस्ट में आपके पास 10 दिन होता है, 7 क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करने होते हैं। अगर आप सातों सॉल्व कर लेते तो आपकी रैंक टॉप 50 टाइप्स आ जाएंगे। जनरली एज अ बिगनर आप 2-3 सवाल सॉल्व करें तो भी सही है, बट आप कॉन्टेस्ट के बाद जो सॉल्व नहीं कर पाए उसको देखिएगा कि कैसे सॉल्व किया है एडिटोरियल में, एंड उससे आप थोड़ा आपकी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग स्किल्स इंप्रूव होगी अगर आप एडिटोरियल पढ़ के समझेंगे कि कैसे जो आप नहीं सॉल्व कर पाए क्वेश्चन को सॉल्व करते हैं। उसके अलावा कोड फोर्सेस सबसे पॉपुलर वेबसाइट है फॉर शॉर्ट कॉन्टेस्ट, तो उस पर आप प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हो कोडिंग कॉन्टेस्ट, एंड आपकी जो भी रेटिंग्स होंगी ऑन कोड फोर्सेस कोडशेफ is a parameter that recruiters heavily index on for new grads. So if you are a candidate master in code forces, you are pretty
हेलो
much
सर।
guaranteed an interview on any
सर
big tech
सर
company.
मुझे इंग्लिश ठीक से आती नहीं।
Sorry,
मुझे
इंग्लिश नहीं, हिंदी में बताऊं?
हाँ
आई
सर हाँ।
रिपीट, ठीक है। तो कोड फोर्सेस कोड शेफ जो है उस पे अगर आपकी रेटिंग अच्छी है, लाइक आपकी रेटिंग 2000 के 1800 2000 के ऊपर है, और आपने एक्चुअली खुद से सॉल्व किया है विदाउट किसी और से हेल्प लेके, तो दो चीजें हो जाएंगी। एक, कोड फोर्सेस मैं टाइप कर दूंगा चैट पे बाद में, अदरवाइज आई जस्ट टाइप इट आउट। कोड फोर्सेस, आई शेयर द स्लाइड्स आफ्टर द कॉल। स्लाइड्स में शेयर कर दूंगा तो आप सारे लिंक्स एक्सेस कर सकते हो। लेट्स कंटिन्यू फॉर नाउ। तो कोड फोर्सेस और कोडशेफ पे आप को लिंक्स दिख रहे होंगे, codeforces.com, codeshef.com। इस पे आप क्वेश्चन प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हो, और इसकी रेटिंग इज अ वेरी यूजफुल मेट्रिक। तो रिक्रूटर्स एंड इवन आप अगर रेफरल्स के लिए देख रहे हो, तो अगर आपकी कोडशेफ या कोडफोर्सेस रेटिंग अच्छी है तो आपको किसी भी अच्छे टेक कंपनी में रेफरल मिल जाएगा, एंड दैट इज अ वे टू गेट योर फुट इनटू द डोर। मतलब एक बार आपको रेफरल मिल गया तो आपकी इंटरव्यू मिलने की प्रोबेबिलिटी इंप्रूव हो जाती है, एंड यू कैन देन give the interviews and hopefully clear it. ठीक है, तो डेटा स्ट्रक्चर्स एंड एल्गोरिथम्स का फंडा सिंपल है, जस्ट प्रैक्टिस अ लॉट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम। जो क्वेश्चन आपको नहीं आ रहा, 1 घंटे में उसका हिंट देखिए, फिर सॉल्व कीजिए खुद से, and that is how you learn. Like there's nothing extremely complicated to become interview ready for data structures and algorithms. So let's move on. So अगर आप एक इंटरव्यू में हैं, व्हाट आर द पैरामीटर्स जिसपे एक इंटरव्यूअर आपको इवैल्यूएट कर रहा है? नंबर 1, फॉर एसडी इंटरव्यूज आपका क्वेश्चन बहुत क्लियर होगा, तो द क्वेश्चन वुड बी स्टेटेड इन अ वेरी क्रिस्प, concise, clear manner in most interviews for SD1 in a pure DSA interview. So you are not expected to convert an ambiguous problem into a concrete problem for an SD1. You'll be given the function signature and you just have to implement the function. The expectation in these interviews is that you use good variable naming, like use logical variable naming, like you don't do int a, b, c. Instead, you do int x or something depending on the problem. Just use logical naming, int alphabets or something like that. So your code should have good variable naming. Although this is not a criteria a lot of interviews index on, for SD1 interviews, you may get rejected if your variable naming is extremely bad. So try to keep your variable naming clean. And the second thing is keep your code simple and short. Generally, the interview is for 45 minutes and folks ask 2 questions or a hard question. So क्वेश्चन का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन इज नॉट गोइंग टू बी मोर देन 100-150 लाइन, उससे ज्यादा अगर आपका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन जा रहा है, दैट मींस यू आर डूइंग समथिंग रॉन्ग. एंड द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट इवैल्यूएशन क्राइटेरिया फॉर एनी इंटरव्यू क्वेश्चन दैट इज आस्क्ड इज आपकी टाइम एंड स्पेस कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी सबसे ऑप्टिमल होनी चाहिए. तो व्हाट डू आई मीन बाय टाइम एंड स्पेस कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी? इसके बारे में आप ऑनलाइन पढ़ सकते हैं कि व्हाट इज टाइम एंड स्पेस कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी. तो आपको कोई भी प्रॉब्लम अगर दिया जाता है, एक्सपेक्टेशन ये होगी आफ्टर यू सॉल्व द प्रॉब्लम कि इंटरव्यूअर आपसे पूछेगा, टेल मी द टाइम कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी एंड द स्पेस कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ऑफ द प्रॉब्लम of your solution. If there is a scope for optimization, he may point you to a direction by saying that can you optimize this further. If you yourself say that this is not optimized, that is obviously a green flag and a point in your favor. But if you're not able to identify it, an interviewer is supposed to prod you to improve your solution. So these are the 2 criteria that you are evaluated on: good variable naming, good function naming, if you are writing multiple functions, and your time and space complexity should be optimal. To keep your time and space complexity optimal, you have to pick the right algorithm and the right data structure. So understanding of data structures and algorithms becomes critical here. And data structure and algorithm interviews are very binary. अगर आप सबसे ऑप्टिमल आंसर दे पाते हो या रीजनेबली ऑप्टिमल आंसर दे पाते हो, then you will be passed and move to the next round, otherwise it is a reject. So that's it. Like these rounds are binary. There is just a wrong and a right answer. There is no in between. Next, let's talk about machine coding interviews. So machine coding interviews may you have to pick a language of your choice. I'll first explain it in English and then translate it in Hindi. That's easier, I think. So you can pick Java for backend, or you could pick JS as well, depending on your choice. For front-end interviews, where you will have to design components, you should obviously pick JS. And if you're picking a framework, pick React, because of adoption of React. Everyone in the industry pretty much uses React or has used it at some point. So JS or React for front-end interviews, Java for backend. You can also pick Python, but there may be interviews where you would be specifically asked to pick a particular language. So the expectations are set your expectations very clearly at the start of the interview. So once you have identified the language, if it's Java or Python, you should be very well versed with the libraries of this language. And then once you have that, you just need to practice a lot of design problems. So, but first up, you also need to learn design patterns. So there are a bunch of good design patterns and design practices that are expected to be followed in any coding system, any code base. So for example, you can learn about them on, there is a tutorial on YouTube called Derek Bannis's Design Patterns. If you search it on YouTube, you'll get a list of design patterns. There are quite a few popular design patterns. Like I'll get to the questions at the end if it's fine, and we can uh, like it's better for me to just focus on the talk, and then we can get to the questions and discuss each and every question. I'm willing to wait a little longer if required. I'll continue. So Derek Bannis's Design Patterns is a good place to study. There are a lot of other good books for design patterns as well. You can find them online. So once you have studied design patterns, you need to practice questions. So uh, the some of the popular websites for practicing questions is Work at Tech. So Work at Tech typically has questions and answers. At the same time, you can find problems on Geeks for Geeks. LeetCode also has some problems, but I would not recommend using LeetCode for LLD practice, because in LLD you may have to implement code across multiple files and classes. So LeetCode is not the best fit for it. तो कोई भी प्रॉब्लम आप जाके वर्क एट टेक पे जाके कोई भी प्रॉब्लम उठाइए एंड उसको खुद से सॉल्व कीजिए एंड देन यू कैन लुक एट दैट सॉल्यूशन. So that's how you become good at LLD interviews or machine coding interviews. Now, one of the biggest challenges in a machine coding or LLD round is time. You have to very quickly solve the question. You would typically have 1.5 hours and you need to implement everything. So you have to be quick, and to become quick, there are two ways that I generally practice. One of them is obviously you do contests. So Hacker Earth has development contests where there are hiring contests that happen and you are given a development problem and there is a time limit. So Hacker Earth is a good place to practice via contest. Another way to practice is pick a question and have a timer with you. So time yourself, how long does it take for you to solve the entire question. Ideally, a timer that works in reverse from 90 minutes to 0 is preferable, because it keeps you true to the interview format. Like you have 90 minutes to implement everything. And that's it. Like that is it about preparing for machine coding interviews. I'll explain the key points in Hindi because I think some folks may not have understood. तो अगर आपका मशीन कोडिंग या एलएलडी राउंड का प्रिपरेशन करना है तो आप लैंग्वेज पिक कर लीजिए. बैकएंड के लिए आप जावा, जेएस, पाइथन पिक कर सकते हो. जावा सबसे पॉपुलर है बिकॉज इट अलाउज फोक्स टू अंडरस्टैंड आपका अंडरस्टैंडिंग इन डिजाइन पैटर्न्स कैसा है. बट डिजाइन पैटर्न्स हर लैंग्वेज में एग्जिस्ट करते हैं एंड आप अपना लैंग्वेज पिक कर लीजिएगा. उसके बाद सबसे पहले आपको डिजाइन पैटर्न सीखना होगा. तो डिजाइन पैटर्न्स अगर सीखना है तो आप अगर इंग्लिश में कंफर्टेबल है तो डायरेक्ट बैनर्स का डिजाइन पैटर्न का वीडियो सीरीज आपको यूट्यूब पे मिल जाएगा. अगर आप कंफर्टेबल नहीं है डिजाइन पैटर्न्स के साथ लर्निंग इट इन इंग्लिश, तो आप हिंदी के लिए यूट्यूब पे सर्च कर सकते हैं एंड आप देखिए किस वीडियो के व्यूज ज़्यादा हैं. टिपिकली कोई वीडियो सीरीज का अगर व्यू ज़्यादा होता है तो इट इज़ सपोज टू बी गुड. वो आपको पैटर्न समझा देगा. एक बार आप डिजाइन पैटर्न समझ गए, उसके बाद आपको प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करना है. तो आप इधर हैकर अर्थ के डेवलपमेंट कॉन्टेस्ट दे सकते हैं. वर्क एट टेक करके एक वेबसाइट है, वहाँ पे आपको क्वेश्चंस भी मिल जाएंगे और उनके आंसर्स भी मिल जाएंगे. तो आप वहाँ से भी क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर सकते हैं. तो क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करने के लिए आपके पास बहुत सारे और भी प्लेटफॉर्म्स होते हैं. तो द की इज सॉल्विंग अ लॉट ऑफ क्वेश्चन. एंड अगर आपके पास लिमिटेड टाइम होता है इंटरव्यू में, आपके पास 90 मिनट होंगे या 60 मिनट होंगे डिपेंडिंग ऑन द इंटरव्यू. 2 घंटे की भी इंटरव्यूज होते हैं. तो आपको आपका जो बहुत बड़ा स्कोप ऑफ द प्रॉब्लम है उसको बहुत जल्दी कोड करना है. तो अगर आपको अपना स्पीड इंप्रूव करना है तो आप कॉन्टेस्ट दीजिएगा, बिकॉज कॉन्टेस्ट में एक लिमिटेड टाइम में आपको सॉल्व करके अपनी रैंक अच्छी करनी रहती है या सिलेक्ट होना रहता है. या फिर आप एक स्टॉप क्लॉक लगा के टाइमर लगा के सॉल्व कीजिए एंड अपने आप को टाइम कीजिए कि आपको कितना टाइम लग रहा है, एंड धीरे धीरे प्रैक्टिस मल्टीपल क्वेश्चन कर करके आपका टाइम अपने आप इम्प्रूव हो जाएगा अगर आप ढंग से प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं तो। आई थिंक आप कवर्ड बोथ एस्पेक्ट। तो मशीन कोडिंग राउंड में व्हाट आर द थिंग्स दैट आर इवैल्यूएटेड? So interviewers typically evaluate how you have chosen your design pattern, and it is very important for you to discuss your design decisions. In any interview, you have to communicate well, because that is a point that all interviewers will uh, evaluate you on. If you are great at problem solving, but you are not able to communicate well, then that is also a red flag, and you may get rejected because of that. But for machine coding, interviewers evaluate you on optimal design pattern usage, use of solid principles, and good variable naming. Other than that, if it is a machine coding round, you may be asked to run a few test cases, and depending on how many test cases pass, you'll be given a score. And top X candidates will be picked based on that score to go to the next round. So I'll explain this in Hindi as well. तो ऊप के जो प्रिंसिपल्स होते हैं, सॉलिड प्रिंसिपल्स, डिजाइन पैटर्न्स, आपको अपने प्रॉब्लम में लगाना होता है, एंड आपका वेरिएबल नेमिंग अच्छा होना चाहिए। कुछ कुछ इंटरव्यूज में आपको टेस्ट केसेस भी दिए जाते हैं जिसको आपको रन करना होता है, और आपको टेस्ट केस के आउटपुट के बेसिस पे आपको एक स्कोर असाइन होता है। उस स्कोर के बेसिस पे कंपनीज डिसाइड करते हैं कि आपको नेक्स्ट राउंड में ले जाना है या नहीं ले जाना। तो दैट्स अबाउट इट फॉर द इवैल्यूएशन क्राइटेरिया फॉर मशीन कोडिंग इंटरव्यूज। There is another flavor of these LLD rounds. In this, you would not be asked to implement an entire functionality, but you would be asked to talk about data models, design patterns, and potentially you may be asked to implement a small functionality. Now, what is a data model? So data model is like a structure in which you store your data. So once you study the fundamentals of object-oriented programming, you would understand what these terms mean, and then interviewing will become easier for you. So in these interviews, the interviewer will set his expectations very clearly that आपको पूरा you don't have to implement the entire functionality, you just have to talk about class diagrams, data models, and potentially implement a small functionality. This is typically more popular in bigger companies that index less on your implementation speed of LLD questions. So these are the two flavors of LLD rounds. One is machine coding, where you have to implement everything from scratch, and the other is an LLD round where the interviewer is looking for your design skills and looking for you to be able to implement key pieces of the system. You don't have to implement everything. So in an interview, what is the interviewer evaluating? They are evaluating your ability to break down a complex problem into simpler blocks and ensure that your system is extensible. So if a new business requirement comes, you don't have to write a lot of code. So that is the purpose of an LLD interview. So if you follow good object-oriented programming principles, you are going to ace this interview. Yeah. So like the backend or the traditional LLD round, there is another variation of interviews, and that is the front-end LLD round. So in front-end LLD round, you would be asked to implement a small feature. It could be something as simple as a calculator or splitwise, and you'd have to implement it from scratch. In certain companies, they may not ask you to run the code, but the expectation still is for you to write CSS, HTML, and JS code that works, or at least looks logically correct. So front-end LLD interviews are unfortunately slightly harder to prepare for because it is not taught in most university courses, and you have to self-study it on your own. So one of the good courses to learn more about front-end is Meta's front-end developer course. It is like a 5 or 6 course series where there are problem assignments, and you can learn the basics of front-end. So if you're actually interested in building front-end websites, this is something that you should look at. Your front-end interviews will not be similar to the back-end interviews I just mentioned. Front-end interviews will focus on you actually building out components. It could also be something like a Google search box. So the preparation strategy broadly remains the same, that you have to practice a lot of commonly asked questions and ensure that you solve it in less time. But the tech stack changes. A good place, again, like I said, to start off on front end, learning more about front end is Meta's front end developer course. So once you have done this course, you should try and implement a few projects of your own. And front end is a field that is very cluttered and is very vast in its knowledge base. So uh, every front end interview may be evaluating on different skills. Certain interviewers may index more on your JS skills. Someone may be looking for CSS, and they will prod you along in a particular direction. So you're supposed to pick that hint and drive your interview in a certain direction. Front-end LLD interviews are generally not extremely common, and for front-end engineer one, the bar is generally low. However, companies do have this interview round, so I decided to briefly talk over it. I'll explain it in Hindi very quickly. तो फ्रंट एंड इंटरव्यूज बैक एंड इंटरव्यू से थोड़ा डिफरेंट होता है. आपको एक कंपोनेंट बनाना होता है, जैसे गूगल का सर्च बॉक्स या स्प्लिटवाइज का ऐप का होम पेज. तो इसमें आप टिपिकली जेएस या रिएक्ट यूज करते हो, सीएसएस एंड एचटीएमएल. तो आपका ग्रिप ओवर दीज थ्री फ्रेमवर्क बहुत तगड़ा होना चाहिए ताकि आप क्वेश्चन को जल्दी सॉल्व कर सको. अगर आपको फ्रंट एंड सीखना है, यूनिवर्सिटी में जनरली इसका कोई कोर्स होता नहीं है, तो इधर आप खुद के प्रोजेक्ट बिल्ड कर सकते हो या फिर फेसबुक मेटा का एक ऑनलाइन कोर्स अवेलेबल है, मेटा फ्रंट एंड डेवलपर कोर्स. इसमें 5-6 कोर्सेज होते हैं जिससे वो अज्यूम करते हैं कि आपको कुछ नहीं आता एंड आपका फ्रंट एंड बेसिक बिल्ड किया जाता है इस कोर्स में. तो आप ये कोर्स करके फिर क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर सकते हो. एंड अगर आपको कोई स्पेसिफिक इंटरव्यू के लिए प्रेप करना है तो आप टाइमर लगा के प्रेप कीजिए, सो दैट आप देख सकते हैं आप एक क्वेश्चन आपको अगर दिया जाए कितना टाइम में सॉल्व कर सकते हैं. आपको आइडियली 60 से 90 मिनट में फ्रंट एंड के कोडिंग क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करना होता है. Okay. Now, this is a slightly different format of interviews. A lot of you may not be giving this interview, but I am just covering this in case someone is interested in machine learning interviews or applied scientist roles. So machine learning interviews typically have a section on math basics. Depending on the company you're interviewing for, the interviews will be different. So certain companies will test you on fundamentals of transformer CNN, RNN. A lot of these are terms that you'll be familiar with if you work in machine learning. There will be machine learning and deep learning fundamental questions, and there will be questions based on the project you have mentioned on your resume. So to get shortlisted in ML rounds, you need to have machine learning projects on your resume, and to actually clear the ML interview, you need to be good at understanding what you did in that project as well as the fundamentals. In a few rare instances, a company may ask you to, a company's interviewer may ask you to implement a basic neural network or a basic feature, or there may be questions on frameworks depending on the company. You may be asked PyTorch and TensorFlow details. But the most important thing in machine learning rounds is having a very strong math base. You may come across interviews where the interview is entirely on mathematics, statistics, and probability questions. Because if you understand stats and probability, machine learning is fairly easy to do. I'll translate this in Hindi. तो अगर आप मशीन लर्निंग इंटरव्यूज देते हैं कहीं पे, तो सबसे पहले आपके पास मशीन लर्निंग के प्रोजेक्ट होने चाहिए रेज्यूमे में, और आपका उन प्रोजेक्ट का अंडरस्टैंडिंग बहुत अच्छा होना चाहिए, क्योंकि इंटरव्यूअर्स आपको पूछेंगे कि आपने ये अप्रोच क्यों इस्तेमाल किया और आप अपने सिस्टम को कैसे इंप्रूव कर सकते हैं वगैरह वगैरह. तो आपका मशीन लर्निंग के फंडामेंटल्स का अंडरस्टैंडिंग बहुत तगड़ा होना चाहिए और अपने प्रोजेक्ट का अंडरस्टैंडिंग बहुत तगड़ा होना चाहिए. उसके बाद आपका मैथमेटिक्स का अंडरस्टैंडिंग स्ट्रांग होना चाहिए कि उसमें स्पेसिफिकली स्टैटिस्टिक्स एंड प्रोबेबिलिटी के आपके क्वेश्चन पूछे जा सकते हैं. काफ़ी कंपनीज मशीन लर्निंग के लिए आपको मशीन लर्निंग फंडामेंटल्स पर शायद क्विज ना भी करे, आपको सिर्फ मैथ और स्टैटिस्टिक्स लीनियर अलजेब्रा के क्वेश्चन पूछे, तो मैथ में अगर आप अच्छे हो तो ये आप इंटरव्यू आप क्लियर कर सकते हैं। उसके बाद कुछ कंपनीज आपको अगर कोडिंग असाइनमेंट कराना चाहे तो उसमें आपको एक न्यूरल नेटवर्क या कोई छोटा सा फीचर इम्प्लीमेंट करने बोलेंगे, मशीन लर्निंग मॉडल, टू टेस्ट कि आपको पाइटॉर्च या टेंसरफ्लो या कोई भी फ्रेमवर्क आपको जो आता है वो कितने अच्छे से आता है। So that is it about the machine learning round. Now, how to apply? I'm assuming that you are looking for your first job here. You may be a college student or a recent graduate. So the way to apply predominantly remains the same. One of the easiest way to apply is getting a referral from someone who works at that company. So in case you are looking to apply to Flipkart, look for someone who works at Flipkart and ask them to give you a reference. The second way to apply is emailing a recruiter. So typically recruiters have open positions, and recruiter here also may refer to hiring managers. So recruiters and hiring managers typically have open positions that they want to fill. If they do not reach out to you, you can drop them a message on LinkedIn or over email if you get access to their email ID, and that is a good way to reach out to them. Now, one of the key things you need to understand that recruiters have very limited time. So your mail should be well drafted and you should be able to communicate why you would be a good asset to the company for a specific role you are interested in. So if you're not able to sell yourself, you would not be getting that referral or that interview. And the easiest way for folks in college is on-campus interviews. So in on-campus interviews, you'll have companies coming in and they will um, be taking interviews. It's pretty standard. Almost all colleges have a version of this. The list of companies may change, but on-campus interviews exist in all Indian colleges. So I'll explain this in Hindi as well. तो तीन तरीके ब्रॉडली होते हैं, आप कैसे अप्लाई कर सकते हो। एक, आप किसी से रेफरल मांगिए उस कंपनी में जो सेम जॉब फैमिली में, सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर, फ्रंट एंड इंजीनियर। अगर आप एमएल रोल के लिए देख रहे हैं तो एमएल इंजीनियर आप रेफरल के लिए मांग सकते हैं। तो एक बार आप रेफरल मांग लेते हैं तो देर इज अ प्रोबेबिलिटी कि आपका रेज्यूमे शॉर्टलिस्ट हो जाए और फिर आपको इंटरव्यू मिले। दूसरा तरीका है कि आप रिक्रूटर्स और हायरिंग मैनेजर्स को पिंग करें। तो अगर रिक्रूटर्स एंड हायरिंग मैनेजर्स जनरली डिसाइड करते हैं कि किसका इंटरव्यू लेना है, तो अगर आप इनको पिंग करते हैं फॉर अप्लाइंग टू अ रोल, तो आपकी प्रोबेबिलिटीज काफी हाई होती है। अगर उनके पास ओपनिंग रहती है तो आपको इंटरव्यू दे देते हैं। और थर्ड होता है ऑन कैंपस इंटरव्यूज। अगर आपके कैंपस में कंपनी आती है और आप कॉलेज स्टूडेंट हो तो ये सबसे आसान तरीका है। दीज आर द मोस्ट कॉमन वेज टू अप्लाई। इफ यू हैव अ स्ट्रॉन्ग प्रोफाइल, you will have situations where recruiters actually reach out to you. So next we'll talk about building out your resume and how you can ensure that your resume gets shortlisted. So a few key things that you should keep in mind while building your resume. First is explain everything in your resume on a star format. So what does star format? Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I'll continue. So you can put your resume in a star format. So in star format, you basically talk about the problem situation you had, what actions you took to solve the problem, and what tasks you implemented. And finally, you talk about the impact of the project. So most folks generally talk about the situation, action, and task in some variation or the other, but they generally don't talk about the result. So your resume should highlight the result. Like let's say you reduced, if you're working on a project and that was for improving efficiency of a certain system, you should quantify that you improved efficiency by this much percentage or you saved this much money. For college projects, this may be hard to quantify. So you should try to participate in competitions where you can say that you implemented this project and you got a top X rank for implementing this project in some competition. So this is one good way to highlight your project. Otherwise, if you just talk about your project, it is not a wow factor. It doesn't um, impress anyone. It's just another project on your resume. Unless you talk about the impact, um, it's just a random project. It's not something that attracts the reader. If it's the recruiter, then um, they will look at the impact of whatever work you have done on your resume. So if you don't talk about impact, then the project doesn't stand out. And on average, a recruiter or a person who's referring you will spend at most 1 to 3 minutes reading your resume. So ensure that you have impact numbers and numbers that say how you stand out from the crowd. So if you came first in a programming competition or a hackathon, talk about that. If you have done open source contributions, talk about that. If you have applied to a exclusive program like Google Summer of Code or some other program which is selective, you can talk about that. Once you talk about all of this, it allows you to highlight your resume, and then it makes it easier for you to get shortlisted. Um, and like I mentioned earlier, emailing is one way you can reach out to folks. So when you're emailing, your pitch should be very concise. No one has a time to read through paragraphs. So you should talk about why someone should hire you for a particular role and why you are a good fit for the manager. How would you add value to their team or their company? Because from a perspective of a hiring manager, they care about getting value out of a recruit. So you should think from their perspective, what is it that they are looking for, and then phrase your name. I think that's about it for resume. And once you start interviewing, there are ways to get feedback on your resume, and we can discuss that in a different session, probably. Like that is slightly out of scope of this session. So now let's say you got your shortlist and you have your interview coming up. You can generally become good at problem solving by doing everything we just discussed, but it is advisable to prepare for specific companies. If you're interviewing for Amazon, um, you should look at Amazon uh, interview experiences on LeetCode. And you can also use LeetCode Premium if you want to. It is a paid subscription. So LeetCode Premium allows you to filter questions by company. So you can get a list of questions that was asked on Amazon in Amazon interviews in the last 6 months, or for multiple other companies. Google will have its own list. Meta will have its own list. While these questions are not the exact questions you'll get in interviews, these give you an idea on concepts that might turn up in interviews. So that is a good way to prepare for interviews. Geek for Geeks is also another platform where you can look for interview experiences. So the key is to look for interview experiences, understand what sort of problems companies are looking for you to solve, and then practice accordingly. Also, we talked about the technical aspects of interviewing. There is also a behavioral aspect. A lot of companies typically ask behavioral questions. So for preparing for behavioral interviews, you should read up on the company's values or leadership principles and the work they do. So that when you are asked a question in a behavioral interview, you know how you should phrase your answer. So if you are asked a question about ownership, you should be able to talk about an instance where you displayed ownership in a project. This is very critical because in a behavioral interview, an interview is looking for very specific data points on a character trait that you may have displayed. It could be teamwork, it could be bias for action, it could be diving into and understanding a particular piece of the problem. So you should have stories for all scenarios that are listed as the company's values or leadership principles. A good way, according to me, to prepare is go through Amazon's leadership principles and have answers for each of them. Amazon's leadership principles are quite um, vast and they cover a lot of scenarios, and most companies will have a variation of these leadership principles that they'll be asking you behavioral questions on. I think that's about it. Yeah. We can take any questions.
Thanks, Indranil. Thanks for the insightful session. We have a couple of minutes before we can close. We can take up any questions. And I have also sent a feedback link on the chat box. Um, I think there are some questions in the chat box as well, Indranil, if you want to check that out. But before that, anyway, I request everyone to fill the feedback form, which will help us improve our sessions on a daily basis. And I will also be sending another link to register yourself, which is the Apna Exclusives link, where you can register yourself and get access to all the sessions and recordings.
Yeah. I'll do one thing. I'll share the slide link with folks after the session ends
Yeah.
in the chat box so that like they can access all the links that are added.
There
Because
are some couple of questions if you want to take up in the chat box.
yeah, I'll just go through all of them. Uh, the name of the platforms are there on the slides. I'll share them with you. I've covered. I'll add a few more names that I mentioned during the talk, and I'll share the updated slide with you. Then what else? Shubha? Rishikesh, can you explain the question? You could unmute and explain what question you had. Are you there on the call? Um, I guess not, but I think the broad question talks about any specific language you want to pick. So, if you are in your second year of college, you can pick a specific domain that you are interested in. If it's app development, pick a language on which you have good resources. For instance, Android app development, if you want to do it, Java is the language. Java or Kotlin is the language you should go for. If you're looking to build out websites, there are multiple stacks. You pick a stack of your own choice and uh, build your software or project. For data structures and algorithms, this is a very personal question. Like it depends on your preference. I preferably use C, C++, but I know folks who use Java, Python, and I've seen examples of folks using Rust as well. So you should pick a language that you are comfortable coding in. Java for me is generally more verbose and it takes time. And because interviews are typically time bound, I prefer C++ simply because I have to write less code. You could also pick Python. Just prefer C++ over Python simply because C++ is generally faster. Um, I think there is a raised hand. I'll just take the questions and then we can go over the raised hands as well. So there are quite a few companies who hire for work from home positions. One of them that I know about is Atlassian, so you could consider applying for Atlassian. There would be startups as well who are willing to offer you work from home, so you could look into that. Like there are companies that specifically advertise work from home as a perk, so consider applying to those companies. If you're looking to apply to any company, irrespective of like Amazon, Google, you should go to their careers page, search, let's say, your company name and careers, and there will be a bunch of openings on that website. Pick an opening that you think you would be a good fit for. Look at the number of years of experience, the skill set, so on and so forth, and then you can just reach out to anyone in that company working in a similar role and ask them for a referral. But when you're asking for a referral, you need to tell them why should they refer you, because they everyone gets several things every day. They have to pick a certain person over like say five other people to refer, because referring each person takes time on the person who's referring for the person who's referring. So make sure you highlight why a person should refer you to their company. No competition mode. Okay. So um, is there? This is an interesting question. So if you only have college projects to talk about, your project should be something that's interesting and you can quantify. So let's say if you did a machine learning project, there would be a metric like AUC or accuracy. You can mention that in your resume. Workshops are generally not required. Like if you are applying for software engineering roles, people don't focus on workshops and certifications that much in product-based companies. Okay, so I think for a disease detection project, you would have certain metrics like accuracy, recall, whatever. So depending on that, you can mention what was the accuracy of that project in your resume. That is the impact that you can talk about. But if you're talking, if you have a project that you're talking about, be sure to understand why you made certain decisions, like why you chose a certain value. Like if you talk about machine learning, why you chose a certain model, why you chose a certain hyperparameter, how you trained. Because if you give an ML interview, you would be asked questions around that. And even in certain company interviews for data structures and algorithms, you'll have a small question you would be asked to explain the project, and the interviewer can ask counter questions. So know your project really well. Someone had raised a hand. I think we can go over folks who are raising hands. Or like if you want me to explain a particular piece again, let me know. I don't see any other questions. Like feel free to unmute and ask if anything.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Hi, yeah.
Sir, I want work from home jobs, sir. So where I will go and search which portal I'm asking.
Okay. So job search, there are quite a few portals. Naukri.com is one that I know of. LinkedIn is like if you're looking what kind of work from home jobs you're looking for, that also matters. So let's say
It's okay, two whistles.
sorry, like you could, I would think Apna also posts
காது 2 வருஷத்துல முடிச்சிட மாதிரி சொன்னா அது உள்ள சமைக்கிறது எதுவும் இல்லையா?
I would think Apna also posts job openings. So look for such portals, Naukri.com, LinkedIn. Apna would also have job openings. So think about the profile you want to apply for and then post on the website. Sneha, you could potentially talk a bit more if you want about job openings. Okay.
I have applied those, but still now I didn't get any opportunity. That's why I'm asking you. Do you have like in your company have any vacancies?
I think there will be vacancies for work from home jobs. You can go to Amazon Careers and look for it. There should be such openings, but I'm not sure. I cannot answer that.
Also, you
Sorry.
can connect personally through LinkedIn. Like you can search for opportunities over LinkedIn, and if you find if anyone is an employee of that particular company, connect with them. Drop in a message where requesting them to refer you for that particular job. That would also help you out. Also, you can check in an Apna website.
Yes, like I think on the Apna website there would be work from home jobs as well. So you can
I
look at
checked
that.
in LinkedIn, but they didn't give any response. Still now they didn't give any response. Before 1 month back, I pinged them, but still now I didn't give any response. That's why I'm asking you.
Okay, like that getting a response is hard. Like it is a hit and miss. It is a numbers game. So ping a lot of people, someone would respond. Like that is how it works. Like if you ping 20 people, maybe one or two of them would respond. So just keep trying, like reach out to as many people as you can. Okay, one second. असेसमेंट मिलती है किसी कंपनी का, उससे कैसे करना चाहिए? मतलब आपको जो असेसमेंट दिया जाता है, लाइक सुप्रिया आपका क्वेश्चन आंसर करते हो, लाइक आपको जो असेसमेंट दिया जाता है उसमें जनरली टाइम लिमिट मेंशन होगी। तो अगर डेटा स्ट्रक्चर्स का राउंड है तो उसमें 2 क्वेश्चन होंगे, आपको 2 क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करना है। मतलब असेसमेंट में लिखा रहता है कि आपको क्या करना है। तो आपको बस जनरली किसी भी असेसमेंट में फंडामेंटल्स आपको टेस्ट करेंगे या प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग टेस्ट करेंगे, और आपका गोल होना चाहिए कि आप um, जितने ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन सही कर सके उतना ज़्यादा सही करें। दैट्स अबाउट इट। मतलब और कुछ आप पूछना चाहते हैं तो आप पूछ सकते हैं, माइक अनम्यूट करते हैं।
Thank you so much, Indranil. Thank you for your
Okay.
patience and thank you for taking up all the questions patiently. So I think we have come to the close of this session. And in case anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to Apna and we'll definitely get back to you. And meanwhile, if you have not taken the feedback yet, please do feel free to take up the feedback link, which is on the chat box.
So I just wanted to know what was the agenda of this meeting.
The agenda of this meeting is to help you go through the topic of career opportunities.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we have
Basically,
any more
career
sessions going
opportunities
forward?
in product level, in the entry level requirements of product companies and what really happens.
Nice. So my question was, do we gonna have more sessions going forward?
Yes, we are going to have more sessions on a regular basis. We are having daily sessions on different topics at 7 p.m. You can register yourself in Apna Exclusives, for which the link is already given in the chat box.
Okay. Thanks, Rohan. Thanks for the information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you.